What's going on, fight fans? I'm John Ramdeen, and this is Fight News Now, the UFC 158 edition. Coming up on the show, it's press conference day, and we'll find out if Nick Diaz decided to show up or not. John Pollock joins us from Montreal as he talks with some of the key players in the 170-pound division. And speaking of the welterweights, Robin Black and I will take a closer look at Joe Silva's unofficial welterweight tournament on Saturday night. But we start with the UFC 158 press conference, and the entire mixed martial arts world wondered how GSP and Diaz would react being in the same room. If you missed the press conference, it was unbelievable. Here are some of the highlights of what you missed.
Going to ask you why you weren't here yesterday and what happened and whose fault was it?
There you go. Thanks, Dana.
I know you, man.
Appreciate it. That was actually my question.
That's it.
What happened yesterday?
Well, it was either I missed that or I missed this, but I was gonna have to catch up on some sleep. I was on some later hours, and I think it outweighed the repercussions. And I'm sorry for the fans. I'd like to put on a show for the fans, but I also like to put on a show for the fans Saturday night. So I'm just trying to make the best decisions to make a showing at 100%.
Did you talk to Dana about it? Did he ask you about why you weren't there?
No, I'm sure he was upset, and you know, I would have liked to make it.
Just one more question. You said you got in late on Tuesday night. Was it because of
Ariel,
yeah.
He's here.
Okay,
He's here. He's here now.
All right.
You got any questions about the fight?
Obviously, it was a big story.
Yeah,
he's
here.
You spoke about it.
He's here now.
It's a part of the story.
I understand.
And
What's part of what story?
Of this fight. A lot of people are interested in watching this press conference to see if Nick was going to show up because he wasn't there yesterday. So we would.
He's here today, and I guarantee you he'll be there tomorrow at the weigh-ins, and I guarantee you he will be there Saturday.
No one's doubting that, but just wanted to get the reason why.
You want to antagonize him. You want to aggravate him and get him pissed off.
That absolutely not.
It's totally the truth. That's
Asking
why
a
I
question.
knew what your question was right when I called it, right when you picked up the microphone. You never even ask questions first. You usually hang back and wait. Ooh, you had to get that first question. You knew what you wanted to ask him.
God forbid.
You want to piss him off and aggravate him. Would you have any questions about the fight?
Not right now.
Okay. If Nick Diaz would play the game just this much, you know, there's a lot of things we don't like to do. For instance, the traveling, you know, when you do all this press stuff, you know, I did an hour-and-a-half radio tour yesterday, and it's the same questions over and over again. But you're talking to different people in different areas who haven't heard the answers to these questions yet. And I understand it gets a little frustrating, but it is part of the job. It's, you know, when everybody talks about the type of money Floyd Mayweather and all these other guys, you ever see the tours those guys go on? They're city-to-city, nonstop tours throughout the entire country. I mean, those guys work hard too. It's part of our gig. It's part of our deal.
To be honest with you, I think a lot of times, you know, they just, you know, they're pretty much making me out to be the evil villain. I fit the description as the evil villain. I think George, he you know, fits the description as a good guy, especially you know. But, you know, you look at my poster, you know, I mean, no offense, but you guys had plenty of time to switch the poster. That poster's, like, the picture of me is, like, from years ago. I mean, can I get one, you know, buttered up Photoshop picture in a magazine or in, you know what I mean, on a poster? I've had plenty of ugly posters. I know they could do better than that, but they're not worried about it. So I like to think, you know, I hate to play the victim card, but I like to think it's not always my fault that I come off the way I do. They like to make me look like the bad guy. George likes to say I remind him of the bullies that picked on him growing up or they had to deal with. You know, I'm gonna say, like, how many times you had a gun to your head, George? How many times someone put a gun to your head? How many of your best friends been shot through the chest with a .45? Or how many of your best friends been stomped, put to sleep into a coma? And you know, we all had to deal with these things in life. Should I go? I mean, how how many kids put gum in your hair growing up? Like, should I go further back? I mean, we have to deal with these things. You know, it's hard times for everybody, and a lot of times that's what makes us fighters. And if it wasn't for that, I hate everybody pulling the bully card. All bullies, I hate bullies. You know, I doubt he was ever a hopeless person. And you know, if it wasn't for what I went through, I wouldn't. Who knows if I would have made it in life? Who knows if I'd be who I am today? So, you know, I just had to live through it and work through it. But I don't go and point the finger and decide that people are the bully, like who, you know, tortured me as a child. I don't want people. I don't want anybody to see anybody hurt. I don't believe anybody out here, you know, working towards greatness deserves to be beat down, smashed in. The fans out there that, you know, they like violence. People like violence.
I don't even know why we're asking this question. The reason why we're fighting each other is because I believe Nick is the best guy right now in mixed martial art, and I'm fighting him because he's the best guy. Has nothing to do with
yeah. But you told the fans that I deserve to get beat down, and you told the fans that I chase you around, or you told the fans.
You told the fan I was scared of you and avoiding you. And
yeah,
everything.
I got the fight too, right? You can understand
Absolutely.
that. I'm working towards something here. All right, everybody knows that, you know. And sorry I had to do that to get the fight, but you know, you know, they're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up. George here is selling you wolf tickets. Dana here, he's selling you wolf tickets. The UFC is selling you some wolf tickets. You guys are eating them right up.
All the selling of wolf tickets and all the things that happened leading up to this fight, there's going to be a fight on Saturday night. You know what I mean? These two are going to fight on Saturday night, and I agree. They are two of the best. You know, he's the champion, has been for years. Nick Diaz has been around for a long time. And listen, all the stuff that Nick Diaz says and does, one thing that he does do, when he goes in and fights, he fights. So that's what this is all about. It's all about a fight on Saturday night, and we're almost there. This is almost over. These two will fight on Saturday.
For the fans, you know, they like to say, like, I'm not, you know, I don't deserve to be here. I didn't beat nobody, top ranked, top fighters, top level fighters. I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there. I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters. I was out there. I was fighting hitters the whole time. I'm the one that's risking brain damage, getting smashed out. You know, these guys are coming out trying to wrestle you out, and you take these punches, then you start quitting early. You know, I say Jake Shields won the fight. I think Carlos, he won the fight too. You know, the way that right now today mixed martial arts works, the way the scoring works, the way it's geared towards wrestling, but you know, we're holding people, rubbing them out with elbows the whole time, and so that's action. So the ref's not going to stand it up. People should be called for stalling. They should be point deducted for stalling or holding. The guy should be yelling action. I think that should just be added in. This is just my opinions as a martial artist. You know, and he wants to go in there and avoid the fight and hold on and get the takedown and win the round. I'd love a 10-minute round. See if who could work through a 10-minute round.
Dana said that I think in 2011 that you were sort of chasing George in the hotel. What's your take on that story?
First of all, I don't think he had any business being there, or maybe on my side of the hotel, in and out of the lobby. You know, I'm gonna be working there. I'm gonna be in and out for you know, need be reasons, and you know, I suppose, you know, the time he's coming out of an elevator or something, and then you know, I stand my ground, and he's gonna try to walk through me, and you know, he's not gonna walk through me. I'm gonna stand there with a hard look on my face, and he's gonna edge his way against the wall to get by, and that's that. You know, that's all that happened. Isn't that all that would happen? That's what happened, bro.
Do you really think I'm afraid of you?
No, that's fine. Okay, no, I don't.
You think I'm afraid of you, man? Are you crazy in your head, man? I'm not scared of you. You'll see Saturday if I'm scared of you.
All right. I'm intimidating, right? That's my plan, to intimidate you out. Okay. I don't believe that the world champion is afraid of me.
I don't
believe the world champion is afraid of anything.
I'm not on steroid, man.
I don't think that. I don't think you're scared of anybody, bro. I don't. We'll see if they test who for steroids or what.
I hope they do.
Okay.
I hope they do.
Yeah. You hope they do. What, for me to test positive for steroids? Ain't gonna happen. Why are you mad, bro? Because you're full of shit and everybody knows it? Is that why? Why are you mad for Saturday night? Watch what happens Saturday night. I say we,
I'm not mad at you, Nick. I don't wish you a bad life.
All right, well, I understand you got to pump the fight, and,
I didn't say nothing bad.
Things
You
didn't go well.
started the whole
Things didn't
thing.
go well for you. Okay? I understand. All right, but, if you weren't selling wolf tickets this whole time, if you weren't selling bullshit this whole time, if you weren't selling no bullshit, we wouldn't, you wouldn't be sitting in this position where you're like, oh, well,
Like we've expected, Nick Diaz steals the show at the pre-fight press conference. George St-Pierre had very little to say. Nick Diaz feels slighted by the organization, saying that he is made out to be the bad guy. Do you agree with that?
Man, I don't know. Like, we worked really hard to try to be good analysts of fighting. We're doing our best. We're trying to get good at that. To analyze the mindset of Nick Diaz, like, that's way beyond my pay scale, man. I don't know what he's thinking, but he's a fascinating individual. In a world where we call storage wars and shows like this reality TV, even though they spout rehearsed stuff that producers tell them to spout, we get to see a guy like Nick Diaz, visceral and just as real as you can possibly see a human being. And this guy's going to stand in a cage with an elite, world-class, one of the greatest fighters of all time in front of 15 or 16,000 fans, and he's got to fight this guy. He can do whatever he wants. I love Nick Diaz, man.
What's interesting is that UFC president Dana White almost came to the defense of Nick Diaz when Ariel Helwani was almost egging him on, talking about missing the open workouts. Nick Diaz just believes that it's him against the world, him and the Cesar Gracie team against the world. I think the most important thing for Nick Diaz is that he does stay focused. And if that means that he has to miss an open workout and get the necessary rest and relaxation time before he gets in there on Saturday night to have a violent conflict with one of the pound-for-pound best in the world, that's what he's got to do, and it creates interest.
Sure, man. If this wasn't Nick Diaz, if this was some other guy, if George St-Pierre called and had his manager call and say, look, George isn't feeling his best, he's got to be at his best Saturday night, is it cool if he steps out? They'd go, no problem, man, go get your rest. It's just because it's Nick Diaz. And it's these aspects that play into his mind. And man, when he is all lit up and this is what he has to do to get excited to fight, to get focused, this is going to be such a great fight because of all these reasons.
There's so many reasons why this main event is so intriguing. You have two world-class athletes with some great stories and almost two polar opposite characters. That's why people want to tune into this
And George
fight.
is pissed off, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the first time that we've seen George St-Pierre get so rattled. Still to come on Fight News Now, the UFC 158 edition. We aren't done talking about the main event. More on GSP and Diaz coming up after the break.
Where you at, George? Where you at, boy?
Uneducated fool. I don't think you're smart enough to understand.
Welcome back to Fight News Now, UFC 158 edition. I'm John Ramdeen, reminding you to tune into Fight Network immediately following the conclusion of the GSP Diaz main event on Saturday night, as we will be live with a 2-hour post-fight press conference show. UFC welterweight Claude Patrick will join us live in studio as we will bring you the post-fight presser. We'll have reaction from the fighters, plus we'll break down each and every fight. So tune in Saturday night right after the fights. And we got to get to this main event, Diaz versus George St-Pierre. I don't know how many people have been this interested in a main event in a long time. Yes, Carlos Condit and George St-Pierre was interesting because George had that big, long layoff. But for anybody who's been following this sport for a long time, Nick Diaz was the guy that people wanted to see fight George St-Pierre because he had a unique style. He had this crazy, brash attitude that could rattle a lot of fighters. We've seen him get under the skin of many fighters, and people believe, oh, he's not going to be able to do that to George St-Pierre. But we know that he actually is getting under the skin of George St-Pierre right now, and that could, in turn, affect the way George performs on Saturday night.
Man, 100%. There are like 2 or 3 huge broad strokes aspects to the technical aspects of this fight. One being, George St-Pierre has many cut and dried ways to beat Nick Diaz. Take him down, hold him there, throw elbows, stand on the feet, kick the leg, and run away. Nick Diaz says it himself. You can run away from me or you can hold me down. Both of those ways will work for George St-Pierre. But now what Diaz has done is got under his skin. He's He's insulted that concept, and he's angered George St-Pierre so much that if he, gets wound up and instead of holding him down, goes to punish him, goes to hurt him, he creates openings where Diaz can attempt to submit him or stand back up. Diaz started this war the moment that he signed the first contract, and he's been playing Art of War mental warfare with George, and he's getting to him, and it'll have an effect.
UFC President Dana White says that George St-Pierre told him that he wants to end Nick Diaz's career, that he is so fired up for this fight that he wants to go out there and hurt the Stockton bad boy. And we've heard from George's coach, Firas Zahabi, that George has never been this mad in preparation for a fight. And this is a guy who faced Josh Koscheck, who can trash talk with the best of them. It would be very interesting to see how George uses that emotion in the cage. Does he use it to be angry and to be vicious and to fight the way we used to see George fight, or does he get caught up in the mental game and then maybe make a couple of mistakes? And I think that's exactly what Nick Diaz is doing. Everybody says, oh, this isn't, he's not faking anything. But Nick Diaz knows that he can get under anybody's skin. And if you want to take away as many tools as you can from the champion, and if you can get under his skin and get him to make a couple of mistakes, it could be in Nick Diaz's best interest.
It is. Or it isn't. You have to deal with the animal that you create here. The question is Nick Diaz real or is this strategic? And I think the answer is it's both. He is being himself, but he knows the moment he signs a contract with you, he's going to start picking away at you. He knows if George plays George's fight, he has a lower chance to win. If he gets George all excited, he can land big punches, he can frustrate him, he can, make him, when he's on the ground, instead of holding him, grinding him, using short elbows, posture up to hit him, grab an armbar, sweep him, stand back up. He is getting George excited enough that, like you said, he can make mistakes. But you have to deal with George now. You have to deal with an angry George. We've never seen that before, but this is a risk Nick Diaz is more than willing to take.
I like physically how both guys match up. George St-Pierre, he's a compact, explosive athlete. You can just tell by the way the guy looks. His physical makeup is that of an athlete. Nick Diaz, on the other hand, yes, we've seen him develop over the years that much needed strength and conditioning, but we know that he's an endurance athlete. We know that he thrives under conditions where we even heard him at the press conference say, I am down for a 10-minute fight. That's what this guy is hoping for. I just don't think he really understands the full scope of North American mixed martial arts, where not only is it a fight, it's more so competition. We're seeing a lot of these wrestlers hold guys down and say the most important thing is that you win on points. That's not how Nick Diaz looks at it. He said, in order to get into a fight, somebody has to get hurt. I'm willing to take one to give one. Will George St-Pierre be able to do the same?
Yeah, if George is mad, he's probably going to do exactly that, which again plays into Nick Diaz's plans, unless it doesn't. Like I said, Nick Diaz, we all know that George is more conditioned, more powerful, more explosive. He's a racehorse, and he has better wrestling. But Nick Diaz believes maybe Diaz has better striking and jiu-jitsu. But George and his people believe George is bigger, he is a better wrestler, he is a better athlete, and he has those skills better. If that's true, it doesn't matter how angry he is. But Nick Diaz has definitely created a monster in George, and he has to deal with it, but I think he wants to.
I think, especially if you look at the arms of Nick Diaz, he has those long arms, and I think that's one area that could frustrate George, especially, we heard Freddie Roach say that George St-Pierre is a better boxer than Nick Diaz. Well, we have to remember, this is not boxing, this is mixed martial arts, and you get to mix up your takedowns with your boxing, with your kicks. But I think Nick Diaz, if he can crowd George, if he can get him backpedaling, I think he could use those boxing skills. And we know that he sparred a number of times with top-ranked boxer Andre Ward in preparation for this fight. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything, because this is an MMA fight. But when it comes to the hands, at least he knows how to deal with a high-level guy.
If he gets George angry, and George, instead of being calculating and making just the right decision, he does the wrong thing only harder, he'll catch George. This is getting more and more fascinating by the day.
All right, still to come on Fight News now, UFC 158 edition. We're changing gears, and we'll break down the rest of the welterweight division even further as we go one-on-one with Jake Ellenberger and Nate Marquardt, so keep it locked.
Nate, the Great Marquardt, Jake Ellenberger.
Welcome back to Fight News Now, UFC 158 edition. Be sure to lock it here on Fight Network on Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for a special 1-hour live Fight News Now weigh-in show where Robin Black and I will provide live commentary during the weigh-ins for each fight. Not only that, but we'll give you our predictions for Fight of the Night and some other goodies. So tune in Fight Network on Friday at 4 and you might see some fireworks during the GSP Diaz stare-down. We go back to Montreal where John Pollock is with a man that could be a wild card in the welterweight championship sweepstakes.
We're here with UFC welterweight Jake Ellenberger getting set for UFC 158, which is coming up this Saturday night from the Bell Centre in Montreal. Your second time fighting in Canada. The last time, of course, seeing you up in Toronto at the Rogers Centre. A very impressive win by yourself over Sean Pearson. First time here in Montreal. Any vibe you've gotten from the city here? This is considered the fight capital of Canada here in Montreal.
Yeah, you know, I'm excited to be here. It's first time in Montreal. I've been to Canada. I've been all over Canada, like Vancouver and a few places up there, but yeah, first time in Montreal. Excited about it. Hoping to make a repeat from what I did in Toronto. The last UFC I was here, but you know, a good vibe though. A lot of friendly people, and I made a few friends last night. So.
Oh, well, that's good. Jake Ellenberger, a man of the people here in Montreal. You were initially targeting Johnny Hendricks for this card. Of course, with the Roy McDonald injury, things got changed around. And now you've got Nate Marquardt. So tell us a bit about that transition as Marquardt returns to the UFC on Saturday.
Yeah, I was really hoping I was scheduled to fight Johnny Hendricks, a guy that was one of the top guys in the division. I'm not wasting my time, and he was the top guy at the time, and still is one of the top guys. But for me, I'm just focused on what I got to do to win. So new opponent, same strategy for me as far as that goes, and just whatever I got to do to get the win.
We just saw Nate Marquardt, of course, in action back in January against Tarek Saffiedine. I'm sure that's a fight you've gone back and watched, and primarily the leg kicks were a significant part of that fight. Did you take a lot away, and do you expect a different Nate Marquardt to rebound after that fight and kind of change things around?
Yeah, I think every fight everyone adjusts a little bit, so I can't expect him to not realize what he did wrong in the last fight and make adjustments. So. For me, I know what I know what I got to do to win. So really, I'm just focusing on the things that I've gotten better at, and getting faster and really stick to my strategy. But yeah, he's pretty well rounded. He's dangerous everywhere. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to to beat him every position.
It should be a very, very entertaining fight week, I think, leading up to Saturday night. We wish you all the best, Jake. He will be taking on Nate Marquardt this Saturday night at the Bell Centre. Pay-per-view kicks off at 10 p.m. Eastern Time.
It is one of the most underrated matchups on the entire UFC 158 card. We head back to La Belle Provence as Pollock gets some thoughts from a former Strikeforce welterweight champion.
UFC 158, it is coming up Saturday night, part of the main card. We are going to be seeing this man, Nate Marquardt, returning to the UFC. And how does that feel, Nate? A bit of a homecoming here for you of sorts.
Oh, yeah, it feels great, man. I'm excited.
Now, we saw a bunch of changes here with Roy McDonald's neck injury, and thus you find yourself onto this card. And you were someone that you were very active, yet you wanted this fight with Jake Ellenberger. You got it. How quickly after going online and maybe through your management did you find out that you'd be getting this fight?
Basically, it was like later that night. I sent out a tweet that I wanted to fight Ellenberger, and that night Joe Silva called me up. I was sleeping, and he said, "You got the fight." So.
Power of Twitter.
Yeah.
There you go, in action, and we get this great fight out of it. This is, to me, just a great situation for yourself here. We see these top 3 welterweight bouts, and it seems Dana White's called it, an unofficial tournament here where, you put in a strong performance here, you're instantly in the mix here. It seems like a great opportunity for you coming up Saturday.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited, man, and Ellenberger's a tough opponent. He's very exciting, and I think we're going to have a great matchup. I think our styles are going to match real well. It's going to be a good fight for the fans.
Yeah, from what you've watched of Jake, was there something about his style that you felt when this vacancy came up that it was like, this is a great fight for me? What was it about his style maybe that lent itself towards yours?
Well, I feel like I can match up well against anybody just because I'm well-rounded. But with Jake, he definitely comes out to fight, and I think. I think I do best when I fight guys who are coming to fight, not just to necessarily win a decision. He comes out to fight. He tries to finish fights, and it's going to make it exciting. And we're both going to leave openings for the other guy. So I think it's going to make a good fight.
Well, we are looking forward to your return to the UFC. It is this Saturday night, pay-per-view main card, 10 Eastern. Nate Marquardt, Jake Ellenberger in a very intriguing welterweight bout.
John Pollock is absolutely right. Intriguing is the name of this matchup. Marquardt, very experienced. Ellenberger, we know that he has that wrestling background, and that's a problem what we've seen Marquardt have trouble with guys that have that grappling background. Yes, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but Chael Sonnen, who was a bigger guy, was able to control him. However, he does have hand speed. We saw him take out Tyron Woodley, who is a decorated wrestler. What are you anticipating from this fight?
You know, I absolutely love this matchup. I just think from a pure sport perspective, these two guys just match up beautifully. Ellenberger's been fighting for 8 years. He's very experienced. But Marquardt, 13, 14 years of fighting at the highest level. And I think Marquardt's going to invite Ellenberger to pursue him and wait for moments to counter. That takes a ton of confidence. It takes a ton of fearlessness and a ton of experience. But Marquardt has that. You cannot pick a winner here, not with any kind of confidence. You know, sure, even a broken clock is right twice a day. But this fight, impossible to pick.
Yeah, when you look at Marquardt, I think that he is, striking-wise, has the better hands. We know that Ellenberger is a wrestler, but in the past, we've seen Ellenberger, he's been able to be broken. And I think that's what it comes down to. If Marquardt can frustrate this guy, either stop the takedown or get up after he is taken down, we'll see Ellenberger dwindle throughout this fight. Is that the strategy you would expect from Marquardt?
Yeah, well, Diego Sanchez wore out Ellenberger, you know, and Marquardt may look to do the same thing. Marquardt, we forget how dynamic his striking can be. We forget how technically good he is. And, you know, when we talk about maybe his wrestling deficiencies, that's quite a while ago. You know, we talked, Ellenberger recognized that Marquardt would make changes in being able to defend leg kicks and not leave that leg dangling out there. He's also got to recognize that Marquardt's probably going to have improved his wrestling a great deal. This is a beautiful matchup, man. Ellenberger is an absolute stud, right near the top of the division, and Marquardt coming back at 170. This fight, really, on any other card, we'd be talking about this one a lot more.
Yeah, I agree, and you'd have to know that Marquardt kind of has his back up against the cage, losing that last fight to Tarek Safadine, but he's facing a guy that, with 28 victories, 23 of them have been by stoppage, so you have to be very concerned about Ellenberger's knockout power, especially, you know, we've seen it. He's got one-punch knockout power. He was able to stop Jake Shields, Sean Pearson.
Sean,
so all it takes is one little mistake. You give that guy the smallest amount of space and you're going to sleep. But we've seen in Ellenberger's last fight against Jay Huron, you can go the distance with this guy. If you can drag this fight into deep waters, if you can avoid the explosiveness, get this fight into the later rounds, you might be able to survive.
Yeah, you see the massive commitment that he makes to these punches. Every punch, turning his hips, throwing it over top. He's throwing baseballs in a lot of cases. Now, what Marquardt, I think, is going to look to do is invite that, is say, hey, throw those at me and wait, and inside left hook counters, uppercuts, knees up the middle. That's a very dangerous game. There's a pretty good chance somebody's getting knocked out in this fight, but it's going to be a barn burner.
Marquardt, just uber experienced, just faced Anderson Silva, Martin Kampmann, Talos Leitis, Damian Maia, Chael Sonnen, and Yushin Okami, really the cream of the crop.
Yeah, that's
so this is all it comes down to is this is just another fight for him, and the fact that nobody's talking about this fight should alleviate some of the pressure.
Yeah, for Ellenberger, this is arguably the biggest fight he's ever had, but like you said, for Marquardt, it's another day at the office. Love it.
Still to come on Fight News Now, UFC 158 edition. We aren't finished with the welterweights yet. When we come back, we'll tell you who has to do what to get a title shot, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Fight News Now, UFC 158 edition. I'm John Ramdeen. We have some exciting programming news to share with you. On Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, Fight Network is premiering a brand new show called 5 Rounds. This is a show that is aimed at the most dedicated, knowledgeable, and passionate mixed martial arts fans. There'll be no broad strokes here. Robin Black and I will welcome a special guest each Monday where we will provide the most detailed commentary, analysis, and demonstration you'll find anywhere. The status of the UFC welterweight division is primed for a massive shakeup. After Saturday night, the landscape of the 170-pound division will never be the same again. In the co-main event, Johnny Hendricks will look to claim the #1 contendership for a third time when he battles the last man to face the champion, Carlos Condit. Both fighters were originally scheduled for different bouts, but an injury to Rory MacDonald prompted Hendricks to lobby for the bout with the natural-born killer.
Just fought GSP. That fight's still fresh on everybody's mind. You can go out there, if you do good, then you know you're ready for the next step.
Big Rig rides a 5-fight win streak into the bout, with the last 3 all coming against top 10 opponents. Thunderous first-round knockouts of durable fighters John Fitch and Martin Kampmann have clearly shown the power that Hendricks has in his hands. However, he has had some trouble with strong wrestlers, eking out a split decision win over Josh Koscheck.
According to me, I believe Josh Koscheck should have won that fight.
As well as dropping a decision to Rick Story, who faces Quinn Mulhern on the prelims. The natural-born killer pushed GSP to the limit in their title fight using his reach and movement on the feet. As well as a dangerous bottom game when GSP managed to score takedowns in their bout. He'll likely use the same game plan in hopes of wrecking Big Rig's road to a title shot.
We'll go in here and I'm going to try to beat the out of him.
Another welterweight bout on the main card features Jake Ellenberger taking on former UFC middleweight Nate Marquardt in his debut at 170 pounds in the organization. Ellenberger was originally scheduled to face Hendricks, but was not impressed when Big Rig wanted out of their bout to face Condit.
It offends me that he did that. So I know we're going to meet eventually at some point. I mean, whether he wins the title or not, I'm sure we'll still meet. You know, in his mind, he probably wanted to take a less dangerous fight.
The Juggernaut has shown his power on the feet, knocking out both Sean Pearson and Jake Shields. In his most recent win, he showed improved cardio, outlasting Jay Huron in a grinding 3-round decision. Marquardt makes his return to the UFC after a 1-on-1 stint in Strikeforce, where he claimed the title in his debut with a TKO against Tyron Woodley. But dropped a decision to Tarek Safadine on Strikeforce's last show. With so many welterweight bouts on one night, Montreal will surely see a shakeup in the 170-pound division. The welterweight division, arguably the most exciting in all of mixed martial arts, especially right now, and especially at UFC 158. George St-Pierre, Nick Diaz, the co-feature Johnny Hendricks taking on the former champion Carlos Condit. And a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, Johnny Hendricks, you didn't get the title shot, it's Nick Diaz, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure Jake Ellenberger wants a title shot. I know Nate Marquardt wants a title shot. Rory MacDonald's like, well, where's my title shot? And John Fitch is like, I'm not even fighting in the UFC. And like 6 months ago, I was the #2 guy. It's time to shake up the welterweight division. And any one of these guys with a spectacular performance on Saturday night could skyrocket to the top of the rankings.
Yeah, it's true. And even, you know, young guys are coming up at 170. And let's not forget Rick Story is on the undercard, a guy who's relevant. It's a fascinating thing to see this many great athletes. It's a reflection of the time that we're living in, where guys are really, you know, the level of quality of the sport is going higher and higher. Better athletes, better training partners. People are really understanding this. And the only way to be sure that you're going to get what you want is win these fights and win them and show that you're the better fighter. And that's what every single guy, we can talk all we want, title shot this and title shot that. And people like sports for different reasons. But for my money, what matters is what happens in the cage. And these guys all absolutely have to win their fight, and they have to win it exciting.
We have to look at stylistically, a lot of these matchups, you like Johnny Hendricks versus Carlos Condit, very similar to the main event as Marquardt, Ellenberger. You have one guy's a grappler, a wrestler, the other guy's a stand-up guy. Will we see a trend where guys just say, you know what, screw styles, let's just go out and put on a great show because the guy that puts on the best performance could find themselves in a title shot? Or is it more like, I don't want to lose, I want to win, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to get a victory, and maybe I'll get bumped up if one of the other guys gets injured?
Yeah, man, it all depends on the guy. You know, Nick Diaz will fight like Nick Diaz always against anybody, no matter what. But, you know, does Marquardt really need to find a way to win without getting injured? I mean, all of these things matter. What I find really fascinating in the early days of fighting, you're a sumo wrestler and I'm a Muay Thai fighter. Let's see who can win. But now we're having guys with different collections of skills, and And we're starting to find out which collection is better. 10 years in the future, every guy will almost move the same, just like any other sport. Football, baseball, everybody has the same skills. But right now, guys are still jockeying for position in how their collections of skills work. It's a fascinating time to watch guys fight.
We know the main event, co-main event, and even Marquardt Ellenberger, we know where they kind of fit in the welterweight rankings. But one matchup, Patrick Cote and Bobby Volker, who knows, one of those guys with a great performance could get into the top 10. I don't know if it's possible, especially considering the fact that Patrick Cote is fighting his first fight at 170 pounds. We might see a guy like Damian Maia who drops down from 185 pounds. It's like, well, I don't know how he's going to look at 170 and start tearing up the division and scaring the rest of the competitors in the 170-pound
Could
class.
absolutely happen, and Volker could come out and say, hey, man, I belong here too. That's why these fights are so fascinating. There's a lot of reasons to watch fights, and among them is just to see great action. And I think Volker versus Cote is all action. Man, from top to bottom, we got 6 welterweight fights that matter, and they're all very different. Cote, Volker, take a break to just enjoy seeing two guys throw crazy punches at each other's head.
For years, we've heard that Rory MacDonald is the next guy for the 170-pound crown, so to speak. He trains with the current champion, George St-Pierre, and everybody believes that until George decides to relinquish that title or move up to 185 pounds, with this super fight with Anderson Silva, that I don't know if it's going to happen, that Rory MacDonald is the heir apparent to the 170-pound throne. Well, Canada is just going to introduce a new fighter in the 170-pound division that is going to surprise a lot of people. You and I have watched Jordan Mein over the majority of his career. This guy is a special athlete because he is coached by his father, who is a martial artist. They're trained in the Boss Rutan system, so their striking is pristine, and they do not neglect any element or any aspect of the mixed martial arts game. I think Jordan Mein, his introduction to the UFC, he's going to gain a lot of fans because he's going to show what the future of mixed martial arts is all about.
Yeah, and he's fascinating the way he has evolved so young. He's very fluid, and he's, you know, that cliche of moving like water. He does that very violently, and I think people are really going to enjoy watching him fight Dan Miller. Dan Miller is a stern test, and he could set Jordan back, but I have a feeling Jordan's going to walk out and say, you guys better pay attention to me, because 2 fights from now, I'm going to be where all you guys at the top of the card are.
Where can Dan Miller beat Jordan Mein?
Dan Miller is so talented, he's driven, he's hard-nosed, he's tough. He can make this an ugly fight, or he can do what any guy can do on any given night and find Jordan's chin or grind him out on the bottom. He's got a lot of ways to win, but watch this highly evolved kid. Put your money on him.
Well, you punch Jordan Mein in the face, and he's going to smile. When we come back, more from Fight News now when we return.
Where you at, George? Where you at, boy?
Uneducated fools. I don't think you're smart enough to understand.
Welcome back to Fight News Now, UFC 158 edition. I'm John Ramdeen, reminding you to call your cable provider to order UFC 158. All the action gets underway Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Despite the fact that it took a year and a half for the GSP Diaz welterweight title fight to actually happen, the hype for this battle kicked into a new gear over the last week. And the brains behind the matchup spoke to the media earlier today.
You know, if he didn't show up today was the big one. I mean, yesterday when people asked me about him not being there, today was the big day. And 13 years, thousands of fighters, you know, however many fights all over the world. Have you ever heard of, you know, I got in, I was tired, I was this, I landed this morning at 4:30, you know. I'm pretty tired too. And all the other guys flew in before he did. And what's funny is Cesar Gracie planned his flight because Cesar said if he goes earlier, he won't show up. So, I mean, we don't just throw flights together. We work with the teams. We've never had these issues before, but we're dealing with Nick. We know that, you know. So
why would other fighters come to the open workouts if there's no, you know?
Yeah, because if they don't, you know what'll happen. You know, we're dealing with a very different situation here than we normally do. And like I said, should he win on Saturday night, it's going to be interesting.
George keeps talking about this. You know, he said it today. I hate doing interviews. Like that's starting publicly to become. You know, it's like who wants to hear him saying that? And you know, and it's almost like
you have to understand. What you guys have to understand, and you being in the fight business should know this more than anybody. As we get to this point here, especially in a fight that's had the shit that this fight has had, they're done with it. They're done with all of it. They want to fight on Saturday. That's all they want to do. And as it all winds down and you start to get the emotion in and the cutting weight and all this pressure and the things that go along with it, you're going to hear that answer sometimes.
He said that at the opening press conference, the first one for this fight. Yeah. He's been saying that all along, and I mean, it's almost like it's becoming, you know, it's like, why should we want to talk to you if that's what you're going to do, right? You know,
don't take it personal. Come
on,
man.
I'm not personally taking it. I'm just making the point that.
I think that you know, if you look at a guy like George St-Pierre, who's been a champ for as long as he has, you don't see people, especially in mixed martial arts, reign as long as he has. You got him, Anderson Silva, you had your Matt Hugheses, and very few guys reign as long as a guy like George St-Pierre has. And he's such a competitor that, I don't know, I just think that it's all starting to get to him and starts to drive you crazy. You know, and let's be honest here. You got media that sit down and ask you questions. You got other people that try to antagonize you, try to pull things out of you, try to twist your words, which, you know, these guys are saying, that might work. You f***ing said it. If we put it in the promotion, it's not a ventriloquist, it's not an impersonator. These are things that you guys said leading up to the fight. So these are things that are in the promotion.
After all these years, do you have any more insight into the mind of Nick Diaz?
No. You know, he is a fascinating human being. Very, very tough to figure out. What most people care about, he does not. What, you know, he's a very unique individual.
Because your countdown show before that, I guess the Condit fight,
well,
kind of.
He's asking me, how come there's no prime time on these guys? Last prime time we did, we couldn't get him to do anything. And then he says, you know, I'm fighting for the world title. Try to find a picture of me in a magazine. Will he show up for a photo shoot? Is he gonna, you know, this is the biggest fight of his life, and we're doing what we can do to get him to this thing. You know, I ripped him out of the first fight. He didn't show up for the press conference. That's why when you say we're 3 days before the fight, it's like Fox saying, "Hey, Dana, you swear too much." You knew what you were getting into when you got into the UFC business. You know what I mean? It's like when I made this title fight, I knew what I was getting into with Nick Diaz. But he was on the conference call the other day. When he says, I saw people talking about, oh, Dana's like, as usual, Nick's not on the call, whatever. Nick wasn't on the call until that second. I called him and texted him, and then I called in on the number because they were telling me that he wasn't in.
Because the last primetime showed him like a decent guy, and, you know.
It's not that he's a bad guy. I don't think Nick Diaz is a bad guy. You know, his image that is portrayed, you think, Jesus, this guy's a criminal. He's probably got a... Nick Diaz has never been in trouble in his life. He has no police record. He has none of that stuff. He is a martial artist. He is everything that he says he is. It's just he's got this very, call it unique personality. You know, I've never come across anybody like him.
I'm sorry if the question was asked before, but how do you feel? Are you worried by what he said about cannabis use?
About what he said about what?
Cannabis use. He said, I think if I understood correctly, he was still using, but not as much.
Are you shocked? Because I'm not. You know what I mean? It's just, it's like him not showing up yesterday at the Nick Diaz, for this fight, Nick Diaz has done more than he's ever done for any fight in the past. So, you know, while everybody wants to focus on he didn't show up for there's a lot of he did show up for, you know, a lot of stuff he did show up for, and I know he's going to be here on Saturday.
Looking ahead, Dana, just, you know, in the event Nick Diaz, you've mentioned this, he comes out with the champion, are you kind of a realist in the sense that we're going to have to change some things for Nick? It's not like this guy's going to turn over a new leaf. Do you feel that you're going to have to, you know, maybe he's not going to be doing the press tours everywhere and we're going to be selective? No,
we don't change how we do business for one guy. I mean, everybody else has to do it. Understand, everybody, George St-Pierre asked for this fight. This is what our longtime champion who's done anything we've ever asked of him, this is what he wanted, and we gave him this fight. So for the fight that he asked for, leading up to this fight, Nick Diaz has done more for this fight than he's ever done for any other.
Is it all similar to Brock Lesnar? Or are they completely, you know, one was a small case and Nick is more headaches? Because Brock was always elusive, but it didn't seem like he would no-show, public workouts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, at any time we have about 450 to 475 guys under contract, right? Different personalities, different egos, different everything. You have to deal with all these different guys. It's what we do. It's what we do.
Dana White is definitely one of a kind. Stay tuned, folks. More to come on Fight News Now, UFC 158 edition, after this short break, including why Robin decided to wear that jacket. While the super fight goes down on Saturday night, George St-Pierre taking on Nick Diaz. I think I'm a little tired of talking about this main event. I'm more anticipating what is going to go down, what is the game plan for each guy. Will George St-Pierre revert back to his old tactics and hold Nick Diaz down, or will he stand toe-to-toe, use some of that emotion to try to beat the living daylights out of Nick Diaz? Because it seems like Diaz has gotten under George's skin.
It's true, and I agree with you, man. It's like there's a million things to talk about. What Nick Diaz is thinking and who's up for a title shot and all this other stuff. But you know what? None of that really matters when it comes down to it. On Saturday night in this main event, we're going to see an elite contest, a beautiful contest of skill and guts and heart and all the things we love about this sport as two of the top athletes in the world compete, and it is going to be something, man.
Johnny Hendricks taking on Carlos Condit in the co-main event. Nate Marquardt and Jake Ellenberger throw down. We know somebody is going to emerge as a top contender in the 170-pound division. But besides that, is there any fight that you're looking forward to on the undercard where it's like, this is a fight not to miss?
Yeah, and it's tough, man. It's tough to talk about anything other than Nick Diaz right now, which is an amazing thing. But I think McDessie versus Cruikshank, man, these two guys have skills that we don't normally see, as well as the usual collection of wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all those things, but extra skills, extra interesting moves and abilities. And when you put these two together, it's going to be special.
I think we have to look at George Roop going down to 135 pounds. This guy is absolutely monstrous, and for him to go down to the bantamweight limit, I think this guy could be a force there.
Yeah, and over time, 10 years from now, they're all going to look like that. The body type for fighting is going to be long and lean, but let's see how Roop does. I'm excited to see it.
Top to bottom, UFC 158 looking to entertain the hardened casual fans. I know they get spoiled by seeing some of the most exciting fighters in the world, like Anderson Silva, but I promise they are going to be entertained by this event. Really, it's top to bottom, absolutely spectacular. We want to thank you for tuning in to Fight News Now. Catch us on Friday for the weigh-ins live at 4 p.m.
It's time! The former Strikeforce welterweight champion.
Where you at, George? Where you at, boy?
The